the entire God Valley incident. One of the most interesting things One Piece has brought us in 2025 has been seeing the God Valley incident in full. And ever since this event was mentioned in the story, all One Piece fans have been desperate to see it, until finally this year we've been able to see it all. But I know for a fact that some people have skipped small details, small chapters, small panels, people who haven't even seen the entire God Valley incident because they only recently caught up with the manga, or even those who dropped One Piece a few chapters back and still haven't caught up. So for that very reason, I bring you this video where we'll cover the God Valley incident completely, and we'll do it by reviewing chapter by chapter, discussing the theories and people's opinions from that time. This way, besides finding out everything that happened in God Valley, you'll see how it was truly experienced by the entire community and the thoughts and theories that existed at that time. And I also know that many of you use these long videos to play in the background while you're doing other things, like for example to sleep or to eat, as many of you tell me. You know, good evening or enjoy your meal, and all the other things you're doing with me in the background. And as I always say, I love it when you comment what you're doing while I'm on, because I'm very curious. Obviously, these kinds of videos take a lot of work, so I'd really appreciate a like, that you subscribe to the channel, and hit that hype button. Now I'll be quiet and leave you directly with the full God Valley incident. But the chapter begins, and we go back 39 years to Hachinosu, the start of the riot, and they say they're searching the entire island. We see an enormous storm hitting Hachinosu, and there are many people lying on the ground. In fact, they say that Don Marlin and his people have been murdered, and they say what happened, that if Don Marlin couldn't protect them, then something really terrible must have occurred. And we see Rocks and Whitebeard arrive, saying that Shaki has been kidnapped. And then the narrator tells us that everything happened in just a few hours, but no clues could be found about the matter, that the pirates were confused and trembling with rage. And meanwhile, they show us Wang Jura, who is Ochoku, the character who defeated Blackbeard to expel him from God Valley. I believe he's Caribou and Korobu's father. It really seems so, as he's counting bills and smiling, meaning he orchestrated all this to get money. And the pirates start shouting angrily, saying, "Hold on, Shaki, we'll save you." And we see Roger, who angrily tears up a newspaper and says, "Damn Rocks, what is he planning? I'm going to smash him." The narrator says that the information had quickly spread across all seas, and smiles had faded, and people had plunged into despair. It was even said that global economic activity had been suspended for several weeks. So they show us 1 year after the incident, 38 years ago, meaning Shaki has been kidnapped for a year, and they take us to West Blue to God Valley. Then we see that Shanks and Shamrock's mother says, "Garling, I'm so happy. I knew you'd come back. Shanks, Shamrock, here's your father." And Garling says, "Oh, are they twins? They're adorable." And she says, "Yes, they're your children. Stay with us on this island, please." And Garling says, "No, and even if we should live together, it wouldn't be here. This island is destined to disappear soon." And she says, "What?" And Garling says, "I've chosen and claimed a woman worthy of me. If I win this tournament, she'll be mine." "A tournament?" she says. And then he stabs her in the chest with the sword, and she ends up lying on the ground with one of those typical silhouettes you see in flashbacks when someone is killed, often with a gun, but this time it's with a sword. And we see Garling say, "Get ready." And the soldiers start arriving on the island, the Marines, and he says, "Understood, we're disembarking." They start arriving and the citizens don't understand anything. They ask, "Did you say Navy ships?" Yes, the island is completely surrounded. A criminal is hiding among us. The citizens obviously don't know what's happening. They don't understand why the Navy's there. Then the Marines arrive, told to use tranquilizer darts and capture resistors. And then we see a young Marine asking, "Commander, what's the objective of this operation?" And this commander says, "It's a training exercise." "You need 10 more years in the Navy to ask questions like that, rookie." Then the boy replies saying, "But sir," and the commander interrupts him saying, "Hey, who is this arrogant brat, Commander?" "Excuse me, I'll deal with him accordingly." And we see this person is asking too many questions, and the Navy doesn't like it. So a citizen says, "Something happened." They shoot him, tear him apart, and then we see a mother with her children screaming, told not to resist or do anything. I must say, this man we see here, he reminds me a bit of Gecko Moria. I don't know if it's him, but this kid reminds me of Gecko Moria, and his age fits. Citizens obviously start fleeing, and we see the Marine from before, the boy, says, "They're just civilians." The other Marine says, "Don't argue." A soldier's personal opinions have no place here. Just focus on the operation's success. And he, while he's aiming with his shotgun, says, "Everything will be fine. They're just tranquilizers. They won't kill them." And he says, "I'm sorry. If they surrender, I will not shoot." And then they introduce this man, Monkey D, Dragon, Marine soldier, future Supreme Commander of the Revolutionary Army, and Luffy's father. It's important they don't mention he's Garp's son. This is important because there's a theory Dragon isn't Garp's son, as it wasn't actually stated, but rather Garp was Luffy's grandfather and Dragon was Luffy's father, but not necessarily that Garp was Dragon's father. I don't know, in my head it makes a lot of sense. They have the same last name, but we know how One Piece works, and this chapter above all proves we can't trust names and surnames. The citizens resist, but he shoots them, putting them to sleep. A loudspeaker announces, "Masks on! Sleeping gas grenades!" Then we see a Navy prison ship escorting slaves. They take us to the telecom room, and a Marine says, "Wow, someone was here." And we see them say, "Big Brother, Aniki, Ginny, are you okay?" Yes, all went well. The journalists must know by now. So the other prisoners say, "Annoying idiots, don't cause more trouble. They'll condemn us too." What kind of sentence? Then Ivankov gets mad and says, "You bunch of idiots, we're all gonna die. We don't know where this ship is headed. Don't wait. How can they be saved if they don't try to survive? Don't underestimate miracles." So we see a young Kuma thinking, wow, they're very lively for slaves. We go to Cypher Pol, the intelligence service. We see their base, and they say there's unexpected news. What's happening this time? And we see a young Morgan saying, "Don't play dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Give me my money. It's in your best interest to buy my silence, right?" So they ask, how can a local paper run by a pretentious kid be so well informed? And he says, "Ha ha ha. Try to stop me if you can. No matter what, I'll spread this news across the whole pirate island." Morgan's president of the World Economy newspaper, and we see how the paper is starting here, which would later become a frenzy. I like it a lot, and I must say this character has interesting things because Morgan's has the albatross fruit, and that is confirmed. This means it's surely possible he's a character we've already seen or will see, and that he has a human appearance and his secret identity is Morgan's, who uses the fruit and is Morgan's. I like this. Suddenly we're in Hachinosu and everyone's happy because they say, "Shaki's alive, it's true, where is she? That's great, she's in God Valley. Where is that?" Then they say it's suspicious, the source is reliable, and we see Ochoku, who's not happy they want to go to God Valley because he orchestrated it all and now he's involved. But everyone was happy with the news that they know where she is, and they say what's certain is it must be a disaster within the Marines. They turned her into a prize in a game for the Tenryubito. Damn them, her kidnapping was the work of those bastards from the world government. And Shiki is thinking, my little Shaki. Then Whitebeard says, the Tenryubito's human hunt. I thought it was just a legend. Kaido's talking to Big Mom and she says, oh, there are devil fruits too. Kaido, you want one of them, right? What kind of powers do they have? Kaido says. And Big Mom says, well, it could be useful for my kids. Then Straussen says, clearly it's a trap, don't you think? Rox tells him to shut up and says, cowards can stay here. We're heading to God Valley. I love this. I love Rox's determination, but it smells like a trap. Straussen's completely right. This is a trap. It's illogical to make Shaki the prize and not expect everyone to rescue her. It's logical. Roger's pirates then ask, Gabin, where is God Valley? It's far from here, but we'll make it in time. We are going to save her, boys, says Roger, and Rayleigh and the others say, of course we will. Then Roger asks, is Rox coming along too? We can't let him get ahead. The narrator says, to make matters worse, that confidential intel motivated the most powerful in these seas. We see them tell Garp that Roger will join and wants to go to God Valley first. But Rox's ship directly meets the Giants, and they say, it's the Giants' ship, no matter, sink it. Wait, what? We must stop. And Rox says, wait, and they say, we can't stop, Rox. But Harold talks to them and says, I was ordered to stop a pirate crew who loved a woman, Rox. If we must fight, sinking your small ship will be child's play. See that ship over there? It's a government escort. And Rox says, do you think that will help you befriend the government? It seems you're underestimating us, Great King. So will you join the world government and let them watch us fight? Whatever you do, you'll still be the madman who wants to change the bar. How about a quiet chat, just the two of us? I really like this Rox character. I really like him because he has his plans very clear and his goals are very clear. But he cares for Harold. He sees him as a friend. They have a lot of respect. It all feels very natural. I like this character. I'm a big fan of Rox. Well, Rox or Davy. So they start sharing sake and say, you must know what we'll do and where we're going. I'll only discuss this with you. I won't even tell my men. What could His Majesty be talking about? He says the Giants. It'll hold us back. My little Saki needs help. The rest are thinking. I don't trust Silver Axe here at all. Silver Axe seems upset, probably because Harold is talking to Rox and they're getting along, not fighting. I think he's a marine trader, something like Sword. Then Rox speaks and says, actually, my real name is Davy D. Shurd. Then Herald says, so it's not rocks? The government probably tried to erase my lineage's name. After all, our ancestor was the legendary pirate Davy Jones D. That's why we've lived in the shadows and barely survived until now. And here I want to suggest, be careful that the D doesn't mean Davy. And someone will say, why would the D mean Davy if there's a D in the name? If we see it's Davy D. Jones, the original. Well, I think it could be that the pirate was Davy Jones, who wasn't known to have a D because he didn't. It was simply the Davy clan, as will be mentioned later, and that this letter D, being erased from history in the other clans, transformed into that D, which would be, for example, the name of Monkey D. Luffy, and perhaps that word from Davy was the letter B. But knowing Davy Jones also belonged to that clan, the letter D was inserted because over the years the information was misinterpreted. I know this sounds like a wild theory, but it wouldn't surprise me if Oda put the D right in front of us, hit it with something so simple, and then revealed it. I'm not saying this means the D at all, but I think it's important. Rox continues speaking. I don't know if it happened at the best time, but 2 years ago, I had a son. To prevent anything from happening to them, I took my wife and son to my home island, telling them one thing: trust the Davy clan. That's why I say the D could mean Davy, the Davy clan, the D clan. Herald says, I see, your son and wife are on your home island, but why reveal such a weakness to me? Rox says, my home island is God Valley. I don't know what's happening on this island, but something very important is occurring here. Something very important is happening. It's no coincidence the chapter title is Island of Destiny, and now we'll talk about destiny. You know, I've mentioned it many times, but it seems this island is destined for madness. I don't know, but I need details. Herald asks, did the government do all that to lure you? No, the celestial dragons would meet on that island. They have no interest in me going, says Rox. They've also made a grave mistake, and that's the truth. I feel like I'm being drawn by destiny. Be careful with destiny. I don't know its meaning. Maybe the D2 destiny, who knows? It was a huge mistake to capture Shaki. If I can let my wife and son escape, that will be enough. This will surely cause their death. I feel like luck isn't really on my side, Herald. Help me. And Herald, with a face I must say looks a bit like a joke. The funny face Oda draws says, I refuse. I'll sink them right here. And Rox says, I see, then do it. Then the rest of the giants say, huh? And Herald tells them not to intervene. Then you hear, you fucking coward. And the narrator says, incredibly, every 3 years, celestial dragons hunt humans on a rich, unaffiliated island, stealing its resources and massacring the native people. And I must say, mind that what we see burned on the ship are the sails. Beware this isn't a strategy by Herald to approach God Valley with the excuse that if they were seen there, it wasn't them because they weren't flying the giant pirate flag, and that they could be any giants, thus helping Rox without breaking the deal with the world government, but still helping his friend. It could be something like that, huh folks? I rule nothing out. Then we see God Valley's people crying, saying help, that can't be possible. And we see God Valley in its splendor, with all the celestial dragons eyeing the prizes. The tournament presenter announces, after the extremely rare devil fruits, here's the grand prize of this tournament. Directly from the island of women in the Calm Belt, next to the Grand Line, the former empress of Amazon Lily, considered the world's most beautiful woman. Here is Shakuyaku. You may take her as wife or slave, your decision. And people say she's beautiful, they want her. And the presenter says, we've cared for her well since capture, jealously preserved her. She's an exceptional prize. Perfect, Summers. Win this for the Shepherd family. Summers says, not in your wildest dreams. If I win, I'll make her my slave. Garling says, she's my wife. Stop dreaming, Summers. Then we see 2 divine knights. One is Gunko, the other unknown. He says, Gunko with me. Perhaps we can win the clan war trophy. I must say, we haven't seen the other character. We don't know who it is, but maybe they're important, so Oda hides their face. I don't know. Then Dragon enters a room where Shanks' mother, we presume, is with her children, and she says, please, escort my children off this island. Don't let him keep them. And that's when Dragon faces the situation. I love this about Dragon. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But we also see another scene. Someone in a cage, a mother with her son, and she says, don't worry, Teach, everything will be alright. Unbelievable this. Unbelievable. We see a baby Teach having a terrible time because he's obviously a slave, captured by the world government, all due to his lineage. Brutal. And the host says, and finally, the super rare prizes of this tournament. Not only is there a buccaneer child, but also members of a lineage believed extinct 800 years ago, the Davy lineage, which reminds us of Saturn's words. And Saturn, when he was on Egghead, told Katarina Devon and Van Augur that Teach's lineage was a special lineage, obviously referring to the Davy lineage. I thought he was a buccaneer, but no, he's from the Davy lineage. Or maybe he is, I don't know. But he's from the Davy lineage. I think that's really cool. We're still in God Valley, and several interesting things are starting to be revealed. We see all the celestial dragons throwing things at the prizes, at the prisoners. We should discuss the prisoners, and we see them saying various things. They say, presenting the Davy clan, which they're introducing, as we saw in chapter 1159. And the celestial dragons start saying they have no idea how much they hate their clan, that they're sure even their ancestors despise them, and that's for something we still don't know and that I'd like to learn in this flashback. And they make us understand that something about the D clan is negative, and I don't know if it's just about Davy D himself. Jones that was introduced in the plot, but perhaps it could go another way and be something a little more complex, and honestly I'd like it to be that way and revealed soon. They also tell us something interesting, which is that they say they are also Buccaneers, leading us to understand that the Davy clan is a branch of the Buccaneer clan, which would make Blackbeard a Buccaneer, something we already discussed here a long time ago, and which, as I said, is the explanation, in my opinion, for why he has 2 fruits and will have a third. And it's because the Buccaneers have 2 souls, only Blackbeard specifically has 3. This can be justified because we see that Kuma lost his soul when he underwent the entire Megapunk process, but then he went to save Bonnie using Haki, which is nothing more than the representation of the soul's will, implying that Kuma in fact still has another soul living in his body. This might sound like a wild theory, but I believe there are several arguments in the manga for this. And now that we get the supposed confirmation that Blackbeard is a Buccaneer, I think it makes a lot of sense and would be a very simple way to logically explain it in the manga. We see them still throwing things, saying they're too dangerous to leave alive. Even the God Valley contest spokesperson says to stop throwing things onto the stage, and the celestial dragons say if they kill them today, that day would definitely become a holiday. And then they show us the slaves. I don't know if they're from the Davy clan, if they're Buccaneers, or not. I don't know. I have no context for exactly who these people are, because we aren't given all the necessary information. But we see a character wearing a hat. I don't know if it's specifically straw, but it's a character wearing a hat. And if we've seen some fan arts of Joy Boy, he looks quite a lot like what this man would be. I'm not saying anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if this character is a reference, a nod, a foreshadowing from Oda to later show us Joy Boy or some important similar character, since that hat isn't random. He could have put many things or nothing at all, and he decided to put a hat on him. This is obviously for a reason, so we also keep seeing the other slaves, the other prisoners, and among them we see Blackbeard, who's with his mother, whom I've seen many people saying is Nico Olvia. I don't think she's Nico Olvia. In One Piece, female designs are very similar. They're pretty simple. So many characters can look alike. So I don't know if this is Nico Olvia, her sister, her cousin, or whatever, so I can't say if this makes much sense, but let me know in the comments what you think. And something interesting we see is Teach's point of view on all this. They show us how he's seeing the celestial dragons, how he's seeing the Tenryubito coming for him. And then we see how he basically views them as helmeted demons, and they are shouting to finish them off, and we see the fear in the eyes of Teach. I really like this because then we understand the character's entire evolutionary process and why he is the way he is. And surely, as I've been saying for a long time, Blackbeard's goal is to get rid of the world government, which I'm glad I've been saying for so many years, and now we have a very strong reason to believe this is almost 90% true. We cut to Saturn and Garling, conversing. He says he did well to find them, feeling it was destiny's work, destiny once more. You know, we posted a theory days ago discussing this, discussing destiny, its importance, and why it constantly repeats in One Piece. It's repeating again, and this will be crucial for One Piece's ending and the final war. The narrator then says he'll introduce the top contenders, who are the main event of the individual challenge. But first, we cut to Dragon, who, remember, met Shanks' mother and the twins. I saw there was some confusion, and it was initially understood that Dragon had met Teach. It wasn't like that, just 2 similar panels, very close and stuck together, but no. We see Dragon met Shanks' mother, Shamrock's mother. They're talking, and the mother tells him she's in her final moments. All she wants is for them to be raised by someone kind. She asks him to become that person, and no matter what, not to let that man take them. And then Dragon says of course he'll help. He grabs Shamrock and he grabs Shanks, runs off, saying it doesn't matter if they're strangers, because after all, if he's on this island, it's precisely to do that, help. And I like this because it already shows us that Dragon from the very beginning was a person with very clear ideals, helping people. So, the event host announces 13 are considered super rare, worth 10,000 points apiece, and 150 are just considered rare. The hunt starts in an hour, and until then, the citizens of God Valley hide, run, and take cover wherever they wish. The game begins. And the people obviously are completely terrified. They're acting crazy. Most of them are handcuffed, not to mention practically everyone is cuffed. And people don't quite grasp what's happening. They don't believe it. They say this has to be a joke, that they can't all die today. And this scene, personally, I love it because it shows the world government's sheer atrocity. The idea of going to an island and then overnight saying, alright, everyone here will be victims of a game. I won't even kill you. You'll be victims of this. You must hide wherever you want, and I'll send people across the island to kill. And the person who kills the most will get the most points. And on top of that, I'd like to know how they'll account for this. How do you account for killing someone behind a tree at the island's end? I don't understand. The citizens obviously start running. Most run with children in their arms, children who are also handcuffed, and they say they can't do anything but run. They wonder if they'll find somewhere to hide their children. But we see how the hunt begins, and the Tenryubito are riding on, well, like ostriches, I suppose, or some such creatures, and they go directly with shotguns to hunt them. And we see a father and mother behind a rock begging their child not to cry, because if he does, they'll be found. But the Tenryubito eventually finds them. We see them pleading for mercy for their son, at least, that they don't kill their child. But the Tenryubito obviously doesn't care and ends up killing them all while shouting, "Impossible with a heart," meaning he's happy and enjoying himself killing people. It's an absolute outrage. Throughout the panels, we see more people suffering the same thing, people constantly being gunned down by the world government, by the celestial dragons, being massacred, and we even go for a moment to Mary Joy's, the sacred land, the god's domain, and we see them broadcasting like on TV, everything happening in God Valley. They've shown us multiple video Denden Mushi around the island, transmitting a live signal of everything that's occurring in God Valley. We're told the Figureland family is in the lead, followed by the Babbitt and Mama Yair families. We see Figureland Garling absolutely crushing everyone. The Tenryubito women are going wild for Garling, and we even see them talking among themselves in Mary Joyce Palace, saying, "Hey, who did you bet on? I bet on the Shepherd family in the clan war, and in the individual challenge, I bet on Gunko. Seriously, she's a knight known as the Faithful Sword of God." Then they introduce Gunko, who's also hunting people, saying, "Oh, the Mama Yair family just scored another wave of points." And then they introduce Gunko, who says, "The Faithful Sword of God, Mama Yair family." Sign, Gunko. This is important because the concept of the Faithful Sword of God, I believe, is something we should keep very much in mind if we relate it to what we saw with Emu. We saw Gunko was with Emu the whole time when Rox entered Mary Joyce's palace. And this could be related to her being called the Faithful Sword of God, having a much closer bond with Emu than the other knights. And perhaps this is for a reason. We've also seen she's the person whose body Emu took. So I wouldn't rule out anything here. In fact, when we discussed this live, I concluded that perhaps, and this is a bit crazy, she could be the one who killed Cobra, and some of you won't understand what I'm referring to. What I mean is, since we haven't seen Emu and they've always been covered, their face unseen, it's possible the one who shot that arrow to pierce Emu was precisely Gunko, as she has a very similar ability. The Emu we saw was simply Gunko's body, controlled by Emu's mind, having taken control, just as in Elbaf, and went to the empty throne simply to avoid damage, not leaving the flower chamber, attacking Cobra this way. I think that would have been quite interesting, and that Gunko is some kind of body Emu can manipulate to do certain things, and that could be interesting. That would be a great twist, and it could happen. Let me comments, what do you all think? We're still in God Valley, Shaky's trapped. People are happy for Figureland Garland for having a wife like her. We continue to watch Summers, who has a child up in a tree. Since the child won't come down, he makes a bed of thorns on the ground. He says the child will eventually fall, and when he does, he'll land on the thorns and suffer even more. I mean, he doesn't even shake the tree or jump to get the child. Instead, he puts a bed of thorns on the ground so that when the child falls, he suffers as much as possible. This is very brutal and reflects, as I said, the whole world government issue. In fact, we see a father jump to save his child, falling onto the bed of thorns, and ultimately dies just the same. So we see Dragon confronted with the sight of all the dead people on the ground, and Dragon says that if he wanted to save someone, he'd have to go against the Tenryubito, and if he does that, they'll kill everyone in his squad. Then we're shown how the whole squad seems to be back on the ship, ready to leave, and they even ask if everyone has left the island. They say yes, but we see the captain thinking to himself, where is Dragon? We see Dragon meeting a celestial dragon, standing before Kuma, Ivankov, and the other slaves. The celestial dragon declares he's found the buccaneer worth 10,000 points, and will kill him. Then Ivankov gives his speech. Don't dare dream of freedom, but think how to escape this game together. Dragon is very surprised because he says they haven't lost hope yet, and then he realizes that the celestial dragon is about to shoot Kuma, but Dragon is faster, shoots the celestial dragon in the head, and puts him to sleep since Dragon's bullets, we recall, are not lethal, but tranquilizer darts meant to induce sleep. And it just hit me, now I get why they were tranquilizer bullets, because obviously they don't want to kill anyone, so the celestial dragons can do it. It's not out of kindness, but they prefer the celestial dragons kill them to count for the game. Now it makes sense. I must add, by the way, I love this dragon thing, and I suppose this would be the spark that ignites the revolution Dragon will lead with his army. We keep seeing a bunch of celestial dragons blowing people up, but then suddenly there's a massive explosion and they ask, what the hell is going on? And then we hear them shout, the Rock's pirates are coming from the east of the island. And not only that, several famous pirate ships are also coming from all directions. And here I must say that there are several interesting things. To the left of the panel, where I'm seeing the rocks part, I see a ship with a very curious flag that instead of having two crossed bones, has a third one that's crossed horizontally. It reminds me a bit of Blackbeard's. I don't quite understand what this is exactly, and actually on the front sail it looks like poneglyph style writing. Maybe it's unrelated, perhaps it's just this low quality capture, but as I see it, it slightly resembles poneglyph script. Maybe I'm crazy, but someone can tell me what it is. I'm not sure if I'll be able to display the image on screen due to copyright, but please let me know in the comments what you think about this, because I find it quite curious. And finally, we see the Rock's pirates arriving 100% at the island. Let's recall that during Kuma's flashback, we saw this same panel in far less detail, viewing it from a distance, and actually, we couldn't even see Rox's face, and here we see it in detail, and we see Rox saying, listen up, I know you're here for Shaki, treasures, and the Kumanomi, but frankly, it'd be a waste if we killed each other now, we must cooperate. Every treasure we obtain will be distributed equally. It's a fair deal, don't you think? Any complaints? Then we see each one's references, one saying they can't share Shaki, another saying it's obvious the first to rescue her will win her heart, another saying it's true, so he won't give up for anything. I still think this Silver Axe guy is a traitor. We see Captain John say, you're kidding, right? Shaki will give her heart to whoever finds the most treasure. Then Whitebeard says, regardless, I'm here because I see her as a good friend, but if I win her heart, I wouldn't complain. This guy is the best. It's like, well, it's a joke, but if you want, it's not a joke. We see Stussy say, what the hell does that mean, Newgate? And then we also see how Gloriosa says, I just discovered that if I rescue Shaki, Roger would thank me with all his heart, right? Straussen also says, don't forget that Ochoku stayed on the island, he's been banned from the bar. And this is important because if they tell us Ochoku stayed on the island, and they tell us Blackbeard was the one who kicked Ochoku out of Hachinosu, this means Ochoku was the person who remained on this island for 40 years. That is to say, none of those present ever returned to Hachinosu Island, and I find this curious. I don't know, I thought they'd come back at some point for something, but no, it seems that from here on, each one went their own way. Big Mom says they're all idiots, and even if the world turned upside down, it's obvious Shaki wouldn't seek their help, and Kaido asks Linlin to give him a Kumanomi if she finds one. I like it because I see a good relationship between Kaido and Big Mom here. It's a shame Kaido's flashback wasn't explored in detail, that we only got those 3-4 panels which were quite regrettable, and we didn't see more of their relationship. I find it very curious. They seem almost like siblings, friends, a couple, I don't know, but they clearly have a good relationship. I like it. We see them start shooting at all the Navy ships. The Navy doesn't really know what to do, and Rox shouts that the Marines are useless and that they follow his pirate orders. And they show us Rox's ship in detail, and we see they have a kind of corpse tied to the front of the ship, and it's a big smoke. But maybe this is David D. Jones, his corpse or something. That'd be good. We see the ship destroy everything, dock at the island, Rox's pirates disembark. Everyone gets scared, screaming, running. The Celestial Dragons demand the Marines do something, and Dragon holds Shamrock and Shanks, immediately running so they aren't caught. He even tries to avoid it all as they shout Roger's pirates are docking. And then something curious, I don't know if it'll matter later, but Dragon finds it strange the children aren't crying. It's a miracle. I don't know if this will make any sense, but it doesn't seem like a typical Oda dialogue for no reason since it goes nowhere in the chapter. Why don't they focus on those two and say it's a miracle they're not crying? I don't know, I think it will be important at some point. They try to escort the Celestial Dragons to the island's center to keep them safe, and we see the Marines saying, "What's happening? It looks like the end of the world. First Rox and now Roger." And Roger's pirates have just arrived on the island too, and Roger says he'll rescue Shaki. Honestly, he doesn't think they can do it, so they'll steal treasures. And we see this crew doesn't care. They run right over Roger, shouting, "Give us Shaki back." I've even seen many attacker insult Roger, messing with him, saying he's lost his aura. Guys, Roger is still a Luffy-like character. We won't get a super epic legendary character in One Piece for no reason, because One Piece isn't that kind of show. Characters like that, we have 3 or 4, and everyone has comedic gags. It's a series with 1,000 chapters, and some people still haven't gotten it. Folks, please, all characters end up with a comedic gag at some point, nearly all, and Roger wasn't the exception. So we see Figureland Garling, who says, "Damn it, the game is ruined!" And even the Celestial Dragons reproach him, saying, "Hey, do something, damn it!" And we're introduced to the God's Knights in their entirety. I love this. And we see them say, "Tell the Marines to protect the Celestial Dragons. The God's Knights will handle the rest." I have to say, I really doubt these people can take on Rox and Roger at the same time. I imagine different factions will form here, some craziness will happen or something like that, but I find it very difficult for these people to face Rox and Roger at the same time. And we see a couple of new characters we didn't know. We see one, I don't know if it's a male or female, who has a cigar in their mouth, who has like 2 horns, like black and white hair. We see something that reminds me of an amber, but with a beard and wings. I'm not sure. We also see a woman who is surely Kina's mother. Yes, we confirm it. And the one we don't see is Gunko. I don't quite understand why she's not in the panel, but I imagine she's doing other things. We see them saying pirates are coming from everywhere, that warships keep attacking, that they mustn't let them reach the island. We see the Rox pirates already starting to wreak havoc on everyone, and suddenly a cannonball is launched at the island. It explodes, and we even see Roger and Rox get quite angry, quite annoyed, saying, "This is a real danger." And then they say, "Look, that ship belongs to Vice Admiral Garp. I'm here. Reinforcements have arrived. It's Vice Admiral Garp." Yes, we are saved. And finally, Garp arrives with a very typical entrance. The Marines finally have hope, and we hear the narrator say that meanwhile, amidst all the bonds of fate, this dead-end island turned into a battlefield of nightmares. We see the Tenryubito leaving through a tunnel, said to be an evacuation tunnel. The Marines tell them not to worry, but the Tenryubito say they'll pay for this mess, calling them useless. This implies Marines who survived face severe punishment from the Tenryubito, at least the less important ones. We see that amidst all the chaos, the slaves being pursued by the Divine Knights say it's time to flee. Then we see Roger asking where Shaki is, hoping she's okay. We see Rox thinking about Aerys and Teach. Remember, an important detail, Aerys was the name that appeared, and if you don't recall, I made a video explaining the full importance of this word, this name, Aerys D. Tar, and all its references to One Piece, which was crazy. In fact, I'll put it right here. You need to see this from One Piece. In chapter 1150, Emu started destroying the world, but a new detail emerged, as one of Emu's magic circles reads Aerys D. Tar. And this may seem a bit random, but what it implies is crazy. At the start of the arc, Robin enters the library of the buff that turns giant with a book, and this book we see is one of chaos magic, given that the mentioned Aerys was the goddess of chaos. If we apply the general belief that the solar system connects to one piece, with direct ties between characters like Luffy as the sun, Emu as Earth, Garling as the moon, the Gorosei as Mars, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and Saturn by name, and the ancient weapons as Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune covering Poseidon. To this, we could add a planet once considered the 10th, precisely named Aerys. And Aerys, the goddess of chaos, is depicted as a woman with black wings and black clothes. Doesn't that remind you of something? And now for the craziest part of all, if we remove the D from Aerys D Tar, we get Aerystar. And Aerystar was a plan created in 1972 by NASA and Auburn University to build a massive system to store and share Earth data. Doesn't this remind you of something? Exactly, Vegapunk's plan to share it globally. And if you think this is senseless, check the project's symbol. Sound familiar? It's like Emu's summoning circles. And worst of all, only 20 people were chosen for the Aerystar program. Exactly the same number of people who united to form the world government initially. This is crazy. And we move to Dragon, where we see he's fleeing with Figurlin Garling and with Shanks. He's fleeing to save them, trying to escape, but he realizes the marine ships have already left. This is what we saw previously, and suddenly one of the Divine Knights appears, whom I thought was a man, but turned out to be a woman. I do, by the way, and he fires a hyper beam right at Dragon's chest, piercing him. He falls, saying, "I got him." Then we see him speaking on a Denden Mushi, saying, "Thanks, Mafi." Had we failed, Garling would have killed us, and we see a child fall from Dragon's arms. Mafi catches him. Surprise, Garling actually has a baby. So, we're introduced to the character who says, "Divine Knight, Satchel's family, Saint Maffei." Dragon tries to cling to life, saying those babies are his way to redeem himself for this massacre. But Mafi ends Dragon's life, stabbing him with a sword, and says, "Goodbye, young Marine." Dragon then resigns himself, saying he surely deserves this as punishment for letting so many innocents die. This was likely a turning point for him to create the Revolutionary Army. I have to say, what we're seeing of Dragon, I'm loving it. Let me know in the comments what you think of Dragon so far, but I like seeing this past interspersed with God Valley for when they show us his full past and to more or less have the origin. I like it. But just before he ends Dragon's life, an attack appears that cuts down many trees and cuts Mafi's body in half. And we see it's the mighty Whitebeard who is arguing with Big Mom, and we see how Dragon hides because he says they are giants and very powerful. And this is quite curious because Whitebeard saved Dragon, leading to all that would follow. We see Big Mom and Whitebeard arguing, and Whitebeard tells her he wasn't aiming at Big Mom. Big Mom then confronts him, calling him a liar, saying she could have died, and if he's putting her in danger, they can duel right here. Suddenly, we see Shiki and Kaido arrive, and we see them start to join the other two. Then, we see a group of pirates who say, "It's Rock's crew, we'll be popular if we kill them." But among these four, we see them start fighting and easily defeat all the others. And Mafi sees these characters and wonders what the hell is happening on this island. If I have to say, it's clear these characters, the Divine Knights, aren't that powerful in terms of raw strength, but they're very powerful when it comes to regeneration. But recently I uploaded a short where I was saying these people weren't more powerful than the Admirals, obviously, and many people jumped on me saying that yes, they were. I think it's quite obvious no Admiral would be defeated by a mid-level Whitebeard punch, let's say, just a glancing blow. This character would obviously be defeated, but we see they have incredible regeneration, so their power and strength don't match the Admirals, but their regeneration is just absurd. Suddenly, we see Dragon realize Mafi is leaving with the babies, and then, suddenly, he finds Shanks, knocked out on the ground from a blow to the head. And this makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, it's logical Shanks isn't crying, he's unconscious from the hit. In fact, I'd love it if when we see Shanks on screen more, he has some kind of head twitch or something from the blow he took. I'd really love that, it would be very funny. And this is the explanation of how Shanks and Garling separated. One went with the world government and the other went with Dragon. I think this is quite simple to understand, but I'll explain it. And Mafi, when she found the baby, simply thought it was Garling's child, and that was it. He shouldn't have known they were twins, since normally they aren't. It would just be one baby. Suddenly, we cut to Garp, who we see punching all over God Valley, saying there are big, top-quality fish here, and he starts throwing punches while chasing Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and Whitebeard. Then he tells them to surrender, and they say no, it's Garp, they should run and can't waste time. And instead, Kaido says, "Why won't you come fight me?" I love this point of view from Kaido, and I love this personality he has. It's a shame his flashback wasn't very deep. So Big Mom uses Zeus and Prometheus to launch an attack called Heavenly Fire Breeze, which we see Garp completely devours, but suddenly we see he's in a completely perfect state, with an incredible aura, saying that with that he wouldn't even be able to cook a rack of ribs, and Big Mom gets very scared. What a beast Garp was! What a beast Garp was! The best written character in all of One Piece. We see Mafi, who says that Kidnapper is surely dead, and she has the baby, assuming all is well. Then we see Dragon leave with Shanks. He says he's sorry, but he can't save his brother, though he can protect him, and this is crazy because Dragon saved Shanks, and Shanks, in turn, saved Luffy. I really like these kinds of connections about saving lives that Oda is introducing. I'm a big fan. We see the Divine Knight of the Magmire's family, how he starts shooting all the slaves, and then they show us a map of God Valley to understand where everyone is located. They tell us that Rox's crew is in the southeast of the valley, Roger's in the northwest, and they are surrounded. We see the explosions, the Marines under attack. They're told to hold their positions even if it costs their lives, and Rox is coming from the other side. Then we see the rest of the pirates, Rox, along with Shiki, whom we'd seen before, fighting each other to see who will save her first. Important detail, we see Captain John with a metal arm, just like Eustace Kid, suggesting he's probably his father or something similar. I have to say that in a normal circumstance I would like this, but you already know that Oda showed Eustace Kid's past in an SBS, and this obviously seemed horrible to me. I saw many people who agreed with this and thought it was fine. In fact, when I got upset about this and mentioned it, many told me Kid wasn't an important or relevant character to the One Piece plot, and I must say, it bothers me that his father is a truly interesting and important character, and Oda put his flashback in an SBS. It annoys me a bit. I wish we'd see more of Kid. We see Summers heading towards a house, and we see a lot of defeated Marines. So Summers says if they're mocking him, how a woman in handcuffs defeated them. And we see Shaki saying she has the impression the pirates have made quite a mess. Then Summers says she's a woman armed with courage and hits her face, saying she's pathetic. Then Shaki kicks him, hurting Summers, and Summers grabs her leg and with a spiked mace hits her leg, filling it with blood. So he says she's really famous. All the pirates came to save her. Her popularity's a headache. It ruined his tournament, and if she survives, Garling will claim her. No one will gain anything at all. So why not kill her right there? It'd be fun to see them travel all that way just to find her body massacred, and he wonders what faces they'll make. So, we see Roger fighting Whitebeard, which shows Roger can't go. We all see him cast his hopes to go there. Roger says he's too busy now and they should handle Shaki. Then we see Rayleigh, who jumps and heads straight somewhere. We switch back to Summers and he says if he hears it, they're right there. But unfortunately, they arrive too late. And though a soldier says St. Garling won't accept it, he says it doesn't matter, they'll make it look like an accident. Then Summers laughs and says, look at her face, she's desperate. This isn't a fairy tale. I'll kill all who come to save her. This is a cruel world. I'll kill her in 5 blows, and with each blow she'll have to repent. She should reflect on world peace while bathing in her own blood. I find it very curious how a world government soldier, a divine knight who is committing all these atrocities, speaks of world peace and all this. I find it interesting. I don't know the context, if it's a random phrase, or if they genuinely believe they're achieving peace for some reason. I'd like to know their perspective. And as he's about to strike Shaki, you hear, I'm sending you to hell. Gigant Bana then hits Shanks Summers, smashing him against the wall, leaving Summers' silhouette, and he's sent flying. Then Rayleigh, with all his aura, tells her, Shaki, forgive my delay. I've come to find you. And Shaki breaks down, crying on Rayleigh's shoulders, telling him, Raychan, you took too long. Then Rayleigh says he's sorry she had to go through all that. And I love this because we see Roger and Gabon crying, watching the scene with sadness and happiness. And I love it, as Rayleigh tells her she'll never be afraid again because he's with her now. I love it. I'm a huge fan, my parents. Well, my parents and Hawks. It's not confirmed, but I'm telling you. And then Roger says, you'll tell him later. Guys, let's save Shaki, grab the treasures, and let's go. We start by seeing how really big battles are taking place, and among them, on the map, we see one that stands out. It's Rox versus Garling, which we'll get to now. So we're seeing many explosions, we're seeing that things are getting really ugly, and Roger tells him to take Shaki to the ship to get off the island quickly, and we see how Rayleigh is leaving with Shaki, running, fleeing from all the explosions. Roger's pirates are protecting him, and we see Rox's pirates say to change their objective. Since they can't take Shaki because they've already lost her, they're going for all the treasures as there are many there, and it's a very good opportunity. We also see a very interesting scene of Shaki talking with Rayleigh. Rayleigh tells her, "Shaki, there's something I need to confess." Shaki replies, "Even if you didn't tell me, I already knew." I think he's referring to being in love with her, a purer love, not just because Shaki is beautiful. We move to the main prize storage, where there are two people we know very well, Ivankov and Kuma, with both fruits, one Kaido's and the other Kuma's. And we see Ivankov attacked by Big Mom, who smashes him directly against the wall. Kuma eats the fruit right away, so Big Mom can't take his fruit since she already took Kaido's. Ivankov starts laughing, saying they can consider this a victory over them, as they've managed to save one of their own. We also see the Navy's communication, stating the island has become chaotic, and they're debating whether to order a full retreat or try to capture him. Meanwhile, we see several fights, and one thing stands out. Marco appears to be kicking Silver Axe. And I just want to remind you here that Marco was 7 years old. I mean, this man, who seems to be Marco, I've seen people say he's Marco's father. I don't know, he looks too much like Marco, so he could be the father, but they're like two peas in a pod. I don't know. Then I've seen people say he's Zeph. You might wonder about the arguments. Well, there's no real argument. People just say it's Zeph, and it doesn't make much sense. But anyway, it seems to be Marco, and at 7 years old, he's thrashing Silver Axe. Silver Axe was a charlatan, or Marco was already very strong, because, honestly, 7 years. That's insane. Next, we see a Marine who's conducting the communication, and I don't know why his face reminds me of Kainu. It's probably not him, but his face does remind me. I'll try to put a manga image on screen because some people ask me, why don't you show manga images? Folks, it's copyrighted. I can't put a manga image here. Ova will come here and tell me, hey, stop putting my manga images in your video, and he'll take it down. At most, I'll filter it and put it up with poor quality so it avoids copyright. We see Bogard and Garp fleeing, running from there, and Garp asks Sengoku, did you know about this? Sengoku replies, if I recall, a man vanished from the Marines after complaining of such incidents. This is important because they already introduced the fact that a Marine complained about these things, about the hunting all the Tenryubito were doing here. And I don't want to say if this character is alive or dead, but the fact that they say he disappeared plays a bit with him being alive or dead. So for example, it's being said, and it seemed to me reading the chapter, that he would be a good character to be the man marked by flames that's mentioned, since there's a lot of mystery surrounding this character, and he might be a Marine who somehow got a poneglyph so the government wouldn't have it because he saw their terror. It could be interesting, something worth seeing. Garp says it's not a damn dream, but reality itself. We see Garp deeply affected by everything happening, but we jump to Rox's side, seeing huge explosions and Aerys, Zebek's wife, demanding to be taken down. She says she has no choice but to flee, as everyone caught was transformed. And then we see Zebek take her away so they don't change that form. And we see all of Davy's clan who have indeed turned into demons, just like we saw happen in Elbaf. Zebek wonders if it's some kind of ability, and we see, as I said, the characters up close, then we see him call them father and grandmother. People are saying Zebek says this, but Zebek doesn't. Aerys does, and she's the one who knows them. We then see Garling and the other Holy Knight, whose name I forget. We see Garling with his head split open, regenerating, saying he's as strong as he expected, that the wounds he inflicted haven't fully regenerated yet. And the other girl says, now we know he's part of the Davy clan. The Master will be pleased if we eradicate him. And she says that's right, even though the game was ruined, it's lucky they found him. And I have to say something I'll comment on later, but be careful with the Divine Knights, because they might not be all we thought they were. We see Aerys tell him to let Zebek down, and she asks if he thinks he can defeat him with just one arm since the other is occupied. And we see Zebek say to listen carefully that anyone bearing the Davy surname, if captured, will endure such torment that hell itself will seem like a playground in comparison. Aerys says she knows it very well, and that's why she's proud to be part of the Davy clan. Everyone was good to her. She says she understands her destiny well, being part of the Davy clan, so let her down. She pulls away from Zebek's arm to the ground, and says that if she were the kind of girl who can't protect her son herself, he surely would never have fallen in love with her. And I find it incredible. I really like it. This character in just 2 lines has captivated me. I truly like her. I understand why Zebek fell in love with her, even though her hairstyle is a bit strange. Then, Zebek calls her foolish, and she replies that if they ever caught him, she'd kill Teach and then take her own life. And he says, we're going to survive. We'll meet again in Lulusia, Zebek. I must say, these people have terrible aim with the places they go. It's awful. First God Valley, they destroy it. Then, Lulusia, they blow it up. If they come near where I live, we might as well say goodbye to the channel. Then Garling turns to Rock, saying, so you finally released your wife and child. Let's see how he plans to strike. And then Zebek says, do you truly believe I'm someone who needs saving? He draws his sword and delivers a massive blow, which we see from outside, and says, from this point on, you won't be able to advance any further. Come at me with everything, you damn monsters. And we see the explosion in the background. Teach is watching it all. Aerys runs off and we head towards the main prize warehouse where we spot Big Mom, who has saved the fruit and declares, this is the Uo Uo no Mi. I will feed it to Katakuri. For my future pirate crew, I will need a power like this. So, just then Kaido appears, striking Big Mom directly in the face. The fruit goes flying and Kaido devours it. And we move on to see the moment Kaido has the dragon fruit. And I must say, this confuses me a bit because it's true the theme of betrayal was discussed a lot in Wano. It was discussed immensely, but it didn't end up being important in Wano. Pirate alliances always end in betrayal. I don't know if this is the betrayal Kaido meant. I don't think it's such a very big deal to give it so much importance, as we don't see Big Mom having any impact on this. And there's also a kind of plot hole because reviewing the Wano manga, I realized that it's Big Mom who tells him Kaido owes her a debt because she gave Kaido the fruit when in reality she stole it. I don't know what debt she has. I mean, it makes no sense. I don't know if it's an Oda error, which is possible. And that's it. No need to give it more thought or why. Honestly, I don't know. From the translations I've seen, Big Mom complains, saying, damn you, Kaido! And we move on to two panels I really like. Dragon going right with Shanks, saying he won't let him die, and Aerys going left with Teach, saying that even if it's just Teach, she'll make sure he survives. We go backstage to the secondary prize warehouse, and they say they found the treasure, and we see a pile of gold. Roger's pirate's very happy, saying there are even devil fruits. I understand the bar fruit will be there. Buggies. By the way, I'd like to know where Buggy is. What's with Buggy? He won't show up, nothing. No trace, no one. I just don't get it. Rock's pirates clash with Roger's to stop them from taking the treasure. The Marines declare they won't let the pirates leave the island, and we even see Garp say, on an island like this, where chaos reigns, what justice should we pursue? I really like how all this is presented. It's quite interesting. We see the slaves say, it's the world government's navy, please, help us dig. We hear through the Den Mushi, God Valley is not a world government affiliate. We can't do that. Then they show Kuma's panel, saying he wants to save as many people as possible, contrasting what justice is supposed to be, saving people. And Kuma, well, he saves people simply because he's a good person. I really like that they're already bringing up these things because we're entering the final part of One Piece, and it's important that we understand that nothing is as simple as we think. We see how someone who appears to be Emu communicates with Saturn and says, Saturn, Rocks is dead. And he says, no idea. To tell the truth, he has exceeded our expectations. In fact, all that destruction, I have a strange, unsettling feeling that a new threat might emerge, and that is very much lurking. Then Emu says, therefore, I will not permit that to come to pass. And we see a dragon emerge from the island's center, flying to the sky. People go wild. Truly, a giant dragon was all God Valley needed. Then we see Kuma freeing all the slaves, touching them with his hand. They say reaching any different place will be like entering paradise. And we see Kuma start touching people, sending them to various places. And I have to say, I don't quite understand this. This seems a bit like a plot contrivance to me. I mean, how Kuma, who just obtained the fruit. First of all, I don't quite understand how he knows what the fruit is. I don't recall if Ginny had the devil fruit book, which is plausible, and she might know what fruit it is. I get that, but how can someone who just got that fruit already know how to use it so incredibly, being an inexperienced child like Kuma? I understand that Kaido can transform into a dragon and would try the fruit because he's an already recognized pirate with a certain bounty and has lived things, and I can buy that. But a small child like Kuma, who is capable of repelling people to places, because let's remember that Kuma's fruit doesn't teleport you, it repels you. That is, it touches you and is capable of repelling things. I can understand it repelling smaller objects at a short distance, but repelling people to islands or other places seems like damn madness to me. I just don't get it. I understand the plot simply needed it, and it makes for a beautiful moment, and the truth is the moment is precious. But if you think about it coldly, it doesn't make much sense. Anyway, it doesn't matter because we're starting to see a massive wave of hacking, and we see a triple panel I love featuring Garp, Rox, and Roger, surprised by that power. We see Saturn's transformation in a small panel, and Okashira says, "Here come Rox and his crew." They say this to Roger and they say, "Forget about them. It's not the time." Then we see an incredible panel of Rox that says, "Damn you, did you think using my family against me would work? I chose to kill them myself. I preferred that to dying by your hands." And we see all those who tried to attack Rox, all the defeated Divine Knights, Garling completely devastated and shattered on the ground. The truth is, I wanted to mention that the Holy Knights have been overhyped, just like the Gorosei. Many people once thought the Gorosei were very powerful, and that the Holy Knights were also hyper powerful, but it's been shown they're not that strong. I mean, Rox is super strong. We all agree. I'm not saying Rox isn't strong, he obviously is, but if several Holy Knights and all the demon soldiers went for Rox and were effortlessly humiliated by him, they're not as strong as they should be, given that Garling is supposedly the strongest, having gone the furthest, been a captain, and now a Gorosei. So what's clear is that the Gorosei wasn't very strong, but rather regenerated. These people, the Holy Knights, aren't very strong. What happens is that they regenerate. And with Emu, the same thing will happen. It really seems that way. He'll have some power, but his main asset will be regeneration. So once that regeneration is nullified, they won't be a problem. I've been saying for years in One Piece that Emu won't be the villain, but Teach Blackbeard will be. And now, with the end of the chapter, you'll understand. We see Rox talking to Whitebeard, and he says, "You know you'll gain nothing from it? Still, you'll lend a hand." And Whitebeard says, "Don't mention it. Thanks to you, I've been drinking free all this time." And Kaido flies out and says, "Oh, look at this. Goro Roro Roro." And he goes directly to where Rox and Whitebeard are and says, "Now that I've finally gotten my ability, I want to try it out." Rox replies, "I'm happy for you. Since I've known you, I haven't seen you this happy." And Whitebeard says, "Everything's fine, but can I ask you something? What the hell is that?" And we see how from Saturn's head, the figure of Emu begins to emerge. And we see the Marines say, "Saturn Osei. What does that appearance mean? Wow, it's a monster." And they're really scared. Here, I'd say it seems like Saturn is possessed. Not so much that Emu is manifesting, because otherwise it makes no sense for Saturn to transform into his awakened form, right? I mean, it's like manifesting through possession or something. We'll see, but I doubt Emu teleported here. We'd have seen a summoning circle or something. I don't know. It looks like what he did to Gunka, which confirms Emu needs a body to fight, so maybe he's not that powerful. Then Garp says, "I must be dreaming. What's happening on this island?" And Roger says, "How great are days full of adventure." They remind me that I still have a great deal to learn. And Rox says, "Are you asking me what exactly that thing is? One could say that this here represents the entire world." And then we see Emu's eyes and what her face looks like. The showdown starts. I love this. I love this. And as I say, the chapter's end makes it clear that Emu won't be the villain. Blackbeard will be the villain. And some of you might say, "Hey, why are you saying this?" Well, we have to go to chapter 1107 of the One Piece manga, where we see Saturn ask Katarina Devon and Van Augur what their crew's objective was, as they were making some very strange moves. And they replied, "The world." So when we see Emu, who is being represented by the words of Blackbeard's own father, who is saying that he is the world, when they refer to the world, it's nothing more than a nod from Oda to say that they are going after the world government, that they are going after Emu. I'll explain this in a future video, but we need to understand that if Rox failed, because we know Rox died here, Teach will not fail. Remember the phrase he told Emu that he would return. This entire flashback we're seeing now, whatever happens on the island, Rox couldn't win, but Emu did. But Blackbeard, however, he will certainly win. And that's going to be cinematic. It'll be very cinematic when Blackbeard overthrows Emu, and we have a final confrontation with Emu possessing Saturn. But this time, it's a bit different. As we saw, it seems he's taking control of Saturn's body, but he's appearing above him. I don't know, it's strange. We see the Marines are quite surprised. They don't know what's happening, and then a kind of tentacles emerge from Saturn's legs, piercing all the Marines. It reminded me a bit of Spider-Man's Venom symbiote, to be honest. It reminded me a bit of this. I don't know exactly why. Perhaps it could even be something like ink. This was mentioned some time ago, and I think it could be interesting. Darkness perhaps, I don't know, but I quite like this idea, this concept. As the chapter continues, the pirates are very surprised, asking why he's attacking the Marines, whose side he's on. Then they realize he's on no one's side, attacking everyone, and the Marines flee with the treasures. Then we see the Marines order everyone to retreat, stay away from that monster, not attack him, and secure the evacuation route. So we see Roger with his crew, telling them to resist, and Gaban to take care of the treasures. Gaban tells him not to do anything crazy, and Roger lunges at the monster. Garp is also talking to the Marines, asking what's happening, what that thing is, and they reply they don't know, but St. Saturn has changed form. Then Garp says, "An old man? It's the first time I've seen one. I'd bet all those vermin look like this one." And they, the Marines, tell him, "Don't say that, Vice Admiral Garp," implying that Garp already disliked the Gorosei. He didn't like the Celestial Dragons, as is well known, and when he sees this monster, he's not surprised it's one of them, and says, "Well, they must all be the same." I wouldn't be surprised because they're vermin, the best character in all of One Piece. But we move to a super epic scene where we see Rocks facing Emu one-on-one, and he says, "Hey you, King of the Rats, you've come to kill me, haven't you?" And Emu says, "So it's you, Davy Jones." Poor Emu is senile. He thinks he's Davy Jones. But Zebek tells him, "You've got the wrong person. I've never met that guy. However, a promise must be kept." And Emu says, "You're going to disappear right here and be erased from history." Emu's words are always the same. He always wants to erase from history. He doesn't need to kill someone, but to erase them from history, which is interesting. And we see him say that Emu's world is still incomplete, to which, while defending himself, Rocks says, "This world does not belong to you." This phrase might seem random, but it holds more meaning than we think. I've said many times that whatever Emu is, I believe that even if this sounds far-fetched, the movie One Piece film, Red, has certain details and things that relate to Emu as if it plants clues for something we'll see later. Something similar happened in One Piece Stampede. The way they defeated the movie's villain and Kaido was exactly the same. Plus, we also saw numerous supernovas and Luffy fighting the movie's villain, a parallel with Wano. So, in One Piece film, Red, to sum it up, we see a demon possesses Uta, taking control of her body and driving all the film's actions. I've shown you scenes of Uta singing, and one where she sits on a throne with swords on the floor, exactly like Emu's empty throne. So, I already mentioned when I watched this film, I really connected this to Emu, and be careful, he might actually be a demon. Going back to the manga's line, "This world doesn't belong to you. Be careful, Emu isn't a demon who has taken the body of someone who has subjugated the world." Simply that, as a demon, let's not rule out he's an alien or something similar. I know some might think this is a Naruto too, but I must say that since Water 7, aliens have been in One Piece. Enel's mini story, as we discussed days ago, already introduced aliens, and we've been on the moon. This is something Oda has planned for a long time. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue. The Marines are surprised that Rocks cut a piece off St. Saturn, and they wonder if they should help, but Garp says, "Of course we must help," and Garp charges into the attack, but the Marines say, "Wait, help who?" Garp immediately wants to confront the Gorosei and destroy them. Honestly, I really like this about Garp. I love his attitude, and I'd love a flashback just of him. It's true we're seeing his past in pieces, but I want Garp's full past, 100%. We see all the destruction happening in God Valley, how everyone is taking the treasures, and Captain John says, "Goodbye, Rocks Pirates," and we see him leaving with the treasures. We see Dragon fleeing with Garp and reaching the ship to leave, suddenly dragged by a force due to the metal on his back, which is the marine weapon he has. And we see how Captain John uses an attack called Big Eater and attracts all metals, all treasures towards him and keeps them all. And we see how they say it's Captain John's Jiki Jiki no Mi, confirming what we saw a couple of chapters ago, that he has Eustace Kid's fruit. And Roger, we see he doesn't seem to care about this, saying treasures don't matter to him. But then we see Ganzui launch explosive snot next to Captain John, confirming he has Mr. Five's fruit. And this excited me more than Kid's fruit. I mean, Kid's fruit seems quite logical for a powerful character to have, but for Ganzui from the Rocks Pirates to have Mr. Five's fruit, 5 of the boogers, I find it unbelievable. This is very Oda, I like it. We see Shiki confront Ganzui for attacking him, then Ganzui asks if he truly thought he'd share the treasures fairly, and as Shiki turns, we see Ganzui throw a booger at Shiki and then start to attack him. This confirms what many of us suspected. The Rocks Pirates disbanded because they all ended up betraying each other. While Rocks was distracted for a moment, being a responsible father, everyone else started attacking each other, a crew destined for failure. Will the same happen with Teach's crew? We'll see. We see all the Marines trying to stop Garp as he charges straight for Emu, and Big Mom is just arriving for Kaido to attack him to make him throw up the fruit. But everyone launches their attack at once against Emu. And we see an incredible panel where we witness Prime Garp's Galaxy Impact, Prime Roger's Kamusari, Prime Rock's Pandemonium, Prime Whitebeard's Hakua, his Earthquake Punch, Prime Big Mom's Ikoku, and Kaido's Bolo Breath, who isn't Prime Kaido, as he's very young here and just got his Devil Fruit. Also, curiously, he calls it the Dragon Attack since he just got the fruit and hasn't named it, so it's a normal Bolo Breath. And all these attacks that we've seen, which are crazy on their own, do nothing to Emu because he regenerates, obviously. We see how he disassembles and directly reassembles without complaining or anything. It's strange, by the way, because here we see Emu's face up close, and it's still a blur, no visible face. So we'll see what Oda does with this, because I understand that back then, when he seemed half-hooded in Mary Jawa's, his face wasn't shown, but here I think we should already see his face more clearly. I guess it's about the fruit or something, but let's see how they fix it. We see the clash of powers knocking out many islanders. We see Roger's own pirates think it's the start of Armageddon. We see Dragon lose Shanks, and Shanks seems to get into a chest, which Roger would later find, starting Shanks' entire adventure on Roger's crew. We see Emu regenerate again, and he says Moose sees them running through the forest. While others fight over what blow destroyed Emu, though we see him regenerating, Emu confirms he's speaking of the new Davy, the woman and child, who despite the chaos, try to survive and must not leave. Then, Rox directly lunges to cut Emu, who cuts him without any difficulty. As I've been telling you for a long time, Emu is not a powerful character. Emu can't withstand a cut. Emu doesn't even deign to attack these people. But Emu, claiming he was nothing, pierces Rox. We see Rox doesn't even flinch, saying it's just a sting and hasn't even hurt him. And Emu tells him he'll take care of them, that he'll massacre his wife and son. And Rox says he is an idiot, he won't do that. Then, Emu launches the Doy Reversy, and we see him starting to transform, while Teach and Aerys flee the island, thus ending the chapter, and this has caused a lot of uproar in the community. And I have to say, I have things to comment on this. I understand people's disagreement, because the Doy Reversy is a somewhat dangerous thing. I mean, we've seen Emu isn't a powerful character, not one who attacks. He has regeneration and Doy Reversy abilities, which are very broken, but power-wise, he couldn't beat me with a baseball bat. A dying cobra did win, but that's all. What happened is certainly very predictable. We've talked about it here for a long time, and you've even mentioned it. It's one of the clearest theories I've seen the whole community hold for a long time, and it was evident. But being obvious doesn't make it bad. But it has also sparked much controversy in the community because apparently the Doy Reversy technique means you can use it on anyone, anywhere, anytime. I don't know, we need more information on this. But for now, it's a very dangerous technique because it sets a precedent of, I don't have to fight anyone, I'm simply immortal, I just touch you, and boom, I turn you to my side. So, I don't know, I feel it's giving him too many broken skills without the needed strength. No, I don't know, it's a bit strange. Similarly, I tell you, I'm not too alarmed by this, because just as Rox's Doy Reversy was very obvious, I clearly see how they'll nerf it. Well, we see it suffering the Doy Reversy's effect. We see Emu's shattered body begin to regenerate, and all others who attacked are surprised, saying the damn attack didn't even affect him. And they start to wonder what the hell that is. I have to say here that many people told me Emu had tanked the attack. Folks, Emu hasn't tanked a thing. Even Rox's attacks tore him apart. The thing is, he has regeneration, but tanking refers to when you withstand an attack without any kind of problem. That is to say, I mean, they can't harm you, they don't pierce you, you stand firm, and they don't cause any type of wound. Here we've seen how Emu's body has been destroyed, but it regenerates. I mean, it's not meant to tank an attack. No one can tank that attack we saw back in 1163. What happens is they destroy him completely, but he regenerates. I'm bringing this up because I saw many people saying that if Emu tanked that attack, they didn't know how he'd be defeated, but that's irrelevant. There'll be a way to nullify his regeneration. We see Emu talking to Zebek, telling him how persistent you are, to which the other replies, "Don't underestimate humans, monster, Davy Jones." That is the name of the ancient king of the world. This is very important, and it will truly give me enough material for more than one video, because now an interesting conversation is coming, but Davy Jones is mentioned again. Be careful. We see Emu say, "Shut up, that man was never a king, not for a single moment. You know nothing about the grudge that exists between Davy and Mu." I truly don't want to say too much because I want to make a video explaining this in detail, but I believe that with this and things that we're seen in, this can give us a starting point to begin connecting loose ends of the ancient kingdom, the Void Century, and all the history we don't know about Davy Jones, and another character who will be mentioned now. About Emu, and this will be interesting. So, Rox says not to be intimidated by a simple name like Davy's, and Rox continues saying, "You were always afraid, weren't you? Afraid that Davy's will would be inherited, and that someday he would come to fulfill his promise." And they focus on Teach, they focus on Blackbeard, which, well, you know I've maintained for many years that Teach will be the one to defeat Emu, the one who takes command of the world government, and Oda, with this panel, all these dialogues and all this, lets us glimpse that it will indeed be so. Xebec continues speaking and says, "Which of the two scares you more, Davy D? Jones or Joy Boy?" To which Emu says, "Stop dreaming. Those guys will never appear again. If only you would disappear." Implying that he thinks neither of them will appear, that he won't have any problem, but both will appear. Davy D will appear. Jones again, and Joy Boy will appear as Blackbeard and Luffy. Perhaps this would explain why he had the wanted posters of both at the time. We see Mu saying, "Davy, Mu has found a great army. They are enormous, harmless, and a rather indecisive tribe." And Rox replies, "The giants? Fool, don't you dare touch Harold. Those guys only wish for peace." Just look how incredible this character is, that despite Harold's betrayal, he understands it. He understands Harold's point of view, and even though he just fought him and destroyed his ship so they couldn't stop him, what he's saying is not to touch Harold and he wants to defend him. I really love this. This is an unprecedented chance. A king so easy to manipulate will never appear again. And it says that just like you are right now, you should hurry up and put an end to this right now, Davy's dream. And we see how Emu triggers the Doy Reversy and Rox, which then causes a giant hockey stampede. And here I must say that this whole thing about Davy's dream, I at least interpret it and connect it very much to Teach's words. The idea that men's dreams never truly die. And I believe this is connected to his own lineage because he knows of Davy's dream, and this dream keeps being postponed generation after generation, and he will be the one to fulfill it because that dream, even though it's 800 years old, will not be stopped. We see him throw Rox directly to the ground. Everyone is surprised, and we see he's already half transformed. We see Big Mom say, "What happened? What the hell happened up there?" And we see Xebec thinking to himself, "Damn it, I'm going to disappear." Then Emu tells him, "With your own hands, eradicate the Davy clan completely. Erase all life that had anything to do with this God Valley." So Rox stands up, and Big Mom gets frightened because she says, "Huh? Why is he so big?" He says, "Clear the way. There is a stain that must be erased from history." The use of the term erased from history every time we see Emu is incredible. We see him pierce Kaido with his sword and say, "Whoa, Rox, what the hell are you doing?" And he slams him directly against the wall. Big Mom lunges to attack him and says, "Damn you, Rox, why are you attacking your own allies?" But he gets rid of Big Mom with just one kick, defeating her and passing by Whitebeard, who already knows something isn't right. And honestly, this panel with the shadows and all is incredible. I wish I could show it on screen because you know there's a lot of copyright, but I like it. Xebec lunges directly at Whitebeard and says, "Are we a nuisance, Rox? Us?" And he says, "Yes, you are." And then we see a clash of power between them, one with the Gora Gora, the other with a sword. That power wave shatters part of God Valley's mountain, falling to the ground, splitting in two, destroying part of the island. And here I must say something important. Many people told me I'd said we wouldn't see fights in God Valley, that we wouldn't see them, and yet we are. I must say, folks, we're not seeing fights. We're seeing power clashes, but not actual fights. We're seeing clashes. We're seeing someone hits you. We collide, and that's it. Then we move to something else or another scene. But actual fights we're not seeing, and this is something I mentioned long ago, and it's happening. And there are even people who are becoming aware of this now and are complaining. I don't consider this a bad thing because Oda, he has said many times that he doesn't like drawing fights. In fact, he created Gear 5 exactly for this because he wants to draw slightly different fights, because he's tired, because he doesn't like them and doesn't always want to draw this type of fights. So all the fights he can skip, he's going to skip them, especially when this is a flashback. Luffy's fights, well, obviously he has to draw them because he's Luffy, and even more so now with Gear 5. Perhaps that's why the fight he had with Katakuri was so good, because maybe it was the last fight he would draw of Luffy, let's say, completely without Gear 5. But the chapter continues, and we see how Xebec directly goes after Teach and Aerys to finish them off, following Emu's orders. We see God Valley being destroyed, all ships on the northeast coast move away from the island. We see the Tenryubito and the Marines trying to board the ship to escape from there. We see how Roger's pirates also try to leave with everything. We see how Rayleigh worries and asks if Roger will be safe. Then we see how Roger's pirates also take the treasures. And we see the chest where Shanks got in with the 3 Z's on top, suggesting he's asleep because Shanks fell asleep inside the chest. And we see Dragon hitting the ground, angry with himself, saying, "Damn it, I can't even save a baby, where did he go?" Let's remember he lost him in the last chapter because of everything that happened with Captain John's Jiki fruit. He was swept away, fell, and got separated. And this image of Dragon, resigned, hitting the ground, reminds me a lot of when Luffy lost the Straw Hats in Sabaody. He was resigned, hitting the ground. It sounds quite similar to me. Then we see Ivankov saying, "I can't go on, if we continue like this, we'll die too." And Kuma says no, that he might still have someone to save, then sees a person in the distance. We see Captain John destroyed by Ganzui. Shiki also destroyed Ganzui, and we see Shiki leaving directly with the chest. Everyone tries to flee God Valley. Here I must mention something important, which is that Ganzui and Captain John were 2 bodies that Moria later had, because if you recall, Moria had these bodies later in Thriller Bark. And there are many theories that God Valley could be Thriller Bark. The truth is, that would be quite interesting. But today I don't know if I see how. Thriller Bark had a castle and all that, and here I don't see a castle or anything. So I don't know if Moria was able to collect these bodies throughout his journey and then took them there, or if there's a connection. And Thriller Bark really is God Valley, as had been mentioned a long time ago. Anyway, be careful because I might make a video analyzing what happened with God Valley, since I found several very interesting theories about this island's whereabouts, and I could upload a video. The thing is, I'm a bit afraid it'll be revealed in the next chapter, and spoilers come out soon, and then I upload the video and the theory of where God Valley is, or what happened to it, is already like discarded or confirmed, so we'll see what I do. Also, if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. Next, Rox, who's in giant mode, Doy Reversy mode, launches directly at Aerys and Teach, and Aerys says, "Xebec, that form of yours, so you lost, didn't you? Forgive me. To save us, you faced that thing, but it was too soon for you to face it." This is important, as it says here, it was too soon for you to face it. Careful, I mean, Xebec seemed to have a plan, and it seems Aerys knew that plan, that there's a way to defeat Emu. He probably knew it, and perhaps hadn't fully developed it yet. Let's remember he needed 2 devil fruits, which he mentioned at some point, and perhaps Teach can fulfill this. Aerys tries to protect Teach, and we see her try to jump into the sea. She says all they have left is to swim because she won't let Davy's blood disappear. And she screams she'll live and do whatever it takes for that. The Marines also shout there are fugitives on the coast and fire cannonballs at them, and Rox is also behind, trying to finish them off. But just as they're about to be destroyed, Kuma touches them, sending them somewhere in the world. I have to say, I really like that Kuma saved them. Truly, Kuma is great. He's incredible. What a character. And watch out, because this implies that Teach's mother isn't dead, which is very important, but very important. And it also implies something interesting. And what if they've sent each one to a different place? And that would make perfect sense. Let's remember that when Whitebeard met Teach, he found him alone, crying, sad. And surely it was because he'd spent his whole childhood alone, without anyone, probably never having had a mother. So, certain theories are already starting to emerge. An interesting point raised then was that Nico Olvia might be Aerys, perhaps having changed her name or something. It was confirmed this girl survived and also appears to have white hair. It would certainly be interesting if Nico Olvia were Aerys. And honestly, I'd like that. We don't have much evidence to support it, but it's something I'd like to see. I think Robin and Teach being half-siblings would be interesting. The fact that his mother belonged to Ohara would also be quite interesting, and perhaps several things could be very important in the future. Anyway, as I said, let me know in the comments what you think. The shots hit the island, and Emu seems to think that Dave's blood has already been eradicated, and tells him, "You are next, Davy." Xing Davy, extinguish all life on the island. Then we see the Marines call Garp, Roger's pirates call Roger, and both tell them they're fine, to let them know when everyone is safe, and that they still have to go, and they'll remain on the island a bit longer. We see Rox start attacking everyone, even his own comrades, and we see Roger and Garp take a breath and shout, "Come here, Rox," as they unleash a massive wave of Haki. Then Emu turns to look at Rox and says, "Davy?" And we see an impressive panel with Xebec in demon mode, Doy Reversy mode, and Garp and Roger are in front of him saying, "I can't let you keep attacking my comrades. What kind of monster have you become?" Realizing that it's not exactly Rox. We see Xebec's inner voice start communicating with Garp and Roger, and he tells them, "Roger, Garp, I beg you." And we see Xebec crying, even from sheer helplessness, as if trying to resist the Doy Reversy since there's still some consciousness left in his head, but he can't control his body. Roger wonders what kind of face that is, because he doesn't understand why he's crying. And we see Garp and Roger very surprised by what's happening. So we understand that Garp also has the ability to hear the voice of all things. He hears Xebec tell them to kill him. And the chapter ends with Xebec attacking Garp and Rox, who are about to face him. The story we were told that Garp and Roger teamed up to stop Rox was true, but only partially. We see Xebec, who was asking them to kill him, and we see Garp tell Roger, "You hear it too?" And Roger says yes. And we see Xebec's inner voice. This confirms Roger and Garp could hear the voice of all things, which I think they're hearing from Rox. We see Xebec's face, completely sad and crying. Outwardly, he's doing things for the Doy Reversy, but inside he feels very different. Roger says his voice, his attitude, and his expression. None of that really suits you. Then we see them exchanging multiple blows and attacking Xebec. There's a huge wave and a massive Haki blast that sends Roger and Garp flying too. We see Xebec's power was insane, further boosted by Doy Reversy. It's important to say that, as I've been saying for many years, we weren't gonna see the God Valley fights. This has been the only fight we haven't even seen completely, because it lasted barely one chapter that we've seen in all of God Valley, since the rest were simply, well, clashes of swords. And I've also seen many people angry about this, and some say no, what we've seen are fights. No, guys, it's sword clashes, or whatever you call it. But so far, this is the only fight we've seen more developed in God Valley, which already feels like the end. And as I said, some didn't like it, wanting more fights. Folks, I don't know why you're surprised. As I've said, I've been warning about this for years, because I know Oda. If you've read over 1,000 chapters, you understand how his mind works. And he himself has said he doesn't really like drawing fights. In fact, Gear 5 was created precisely to make the fights a bit different and not make them as repetitive as always. This was said by him, and Oda ultimately wants to have fun making the manga, and drawing fights all the time. He won't do it because he doesn't like it, and if they're not 100% necessary fights, like those of the Straw Hats, then he won't draw them. In this case, I understand that for fan service and what the fight itself entails, he drew it, and it's not like he dedicated 3 chapters to the battle. We continue to see that through the clash of Haki, the sky has split, and here I must mention something important. I know this has been shown many times. The first time we saw the sky split was with Whitebeard and Shanks' clash, which obviously showed their great power, but it's something we've seen a couple of times in the story. We've seen it in Wano a couple of times, we've seen it here again, I think we've seen it another time in the manga, though I don't recall where now. So it's something that keeps repeating, and I think in this case, for example, it wasn't necessary to show. I mean, we already know about these people's power, we know exactly the power he had, and it wasn't necessary to dedicate a panel and a line from within the chapter to say that the sky has split. It wasn't necessary because we already know the power. It's nothing that impresses us at this point, so maybe I'm being a bit naive, but I have a feeling that perhaps this splitting the sky will have a bigger implication. In other words, Oda reminds you again, even when it's not needed, you've already seen this clash and assumed these people are stronger than characters we've seen before, but they show it to you again. So, I don't know. I feel like there's something hidden here, and maybe this could be very important in the future. For what? I have no idea. As I said, it's more intuition, or I sense something strange, but well, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you found it strange, if you agree or not. We see everyone on the island starting to flee. We see Silver Axe telling them to steal a ship and head straight for the port. They wonder if they won't return on Rox's ship, but Shiki says the era of the Rox pirates ends here. And we see all the pirates fleeing to the coast to escape. We see Garp also communicating with the Marines, telling them, "My orders are clear. Gather the island survivors onto ships and set sail immediately." And Roger in turn is communicating with his ship, with his crew, and they ask what's happening on the island. He says, "Set sail when Rayleigh and the others arrive and wait for me in open sea." It's important Roger already had that egg, or stone I think, on his ship, and we see a panel I love, both saying, "I'll be back, I promise." And I love it, because even if it seems like a silly detail, I like how Roger here resembles Ace so much. I don't know, I like it, and we see them both take off their capes, throw them to the ground, a bit like the legendary Dragon Ball when they'd shed their clothes to fight seriously. And we see Garp say, "Ah, Roger, I came to this island intending to arrest you," and Roger replies, "And I plan to get Shaki back and leave with the treasures." And Roger says, "Then we'll make a temporary truce to defeat him together." To which Garp says, "Even though this is the most hateful offer I've ever heard, I can't let him go free." And they both charge at him, and Garp tells him, "Hey Rox, that form of yours is like a curse. There's no way to stop it." And the two of them start fighting to the death against Xebec, throwing him, striking with the sword, Roger yelling for him to wake up, "You idiot." Rayleigh and the others are talking, and the crew says, "Hurry, Roger and Garp won't stop for our safe escape. That Haki's not normal." Then Gloriosa tells Scopper Gaban, "Let me get on the ship." He says, "Huh, Gloriosa?" So I understand that yes, he stayed with them on the ship too, since he left the Rock's crew because it was over. And we see Big Mom and Kaido arguing, and she says, "Listen closely, Kaido. Everything you give will always be returned. One day you'll owe me a favor." And we see Kaido say, "Stop talking nonsense and accept defeat, Lin Lin. You'll see, soon I'll create a pirate crew that will impose its law by force." Big Mom says, "You think too highly of yourself, poor you. You'll never defeat me." And Straussen says, "Lin Lin, what are you doing? Let's go, bring the treasures." And Big Mom replies to Kaido, "I will make you pay your debt." To which Kaido says, "I'll be watching you closely." We can see they are certainly angry, but they don't stop being friends. They don't stop being companions. And I also understand that this is a bit what later influenced the Wano arc when they were allied. We continue watching the fight. We see how Rox keeps hitting Garp and Roger. We see Whitebeard leaving there, and someone tells him, "You're the one who made that mountain fall, Newgate." "Who are you?" Whitebeard replies. And the mysterious person says, "It seems you no longer have a pirate crew." "I'm Grand Polo, a captain of the Tolo Pirates, a man who's obviously Marco the Phoenix's father. Now, imagine he's not, but Eustace Kid's dad, just for the fun of it. He says he's a great admirer, and since he's without a crew or ships, he'd like to join him." And Whitebeard says, "Get out of my sight, I'm not in the mood." We cut to Stussy, who says, "Hey, where's Newgate?" And the others reply they have no idea. And curiously, we see a character with Perona's fruit. I really like seeing characters from years ago with fruits from some random new characters. We move on to one of my favorite moments of the chapter, and we see the Marine ship where someone says, "What the hell are you doing, Dragon? Calm down." Dragon puts his rifle to the head of the ship's Marine chief and says, "What the hell are you doing? Don't you see what you're part of?" The other Marines yell, "Hey, Dragon!" And Dragon says, "Rescue these civilians, get them on board. Anyone who resists, I'll execute myself." And we see many God Valley people handcuffed, suffering the consequences of everything on the island. Thanks to Dragon, they're implied to be saved, as other Marines say, "This won't end like this, Dragon." Dragon replies, "I count on it." Once everyone's on the ship, Scopper Gaban and Rayleigh run back to the island. Someone asks, "Where are you going, Rayleigh, Gaban?" They reply, "Don't come closer, take the ship to sea and wait there." What we see there is Emu speaking as the other ships begin to pull away, and he says, "Erase this island from history as if it had never existed. Understood." And we see a panel that is generally eerie. It's Saturn with Emu's eyes, as if half possessed and half shadowed, speaking through Emu, and I like it. Then the narrator says, "The God Valley Incident, top secret classification, S level. Marine Headquarters, G11 Branch, Cyberpole 6. Secret mission log and special reward information. The list of participants for the human hunt has been destroyed. Event location, God Valley. Information about the island's size and location, deleted. Number of dead in the incident, unknown." And suddenly we see Roger, who speaks to Garp, telling him mid-fight, "Garp, you knew that black monster's from the government, right? Your justice is disgusting." And Garp says, "Though I hate it, I agree with you." And Roger says, "If you ever leave the Marines, join my crew." To which Garp replies, "Idiot, if I quit, who'll protect the Marines?" Honestly, Garp is the best written character in all of One Piece. He knows the justice he defends is crap, but he must protect the Marines too, as there are good people in the Navy. Though this also, as I said, creates many plot holes in my head, because I don't understand exactly how this will end. I mean, Garp knows that monster is from the government. Roger knows it too. They know the government. There's something strange there that creates these things, and that's, as they say, justice is crap. But Garp is still in the Navy. The world government doesn't try to stop him. When they've seen that Garp has been fighting against this and that he's seen Saturn, I don't understand. I mean, if the world government is in charge of the Navy and they have Garp, who knows very dangerous things about God Valley, why then don't they try to get rid of him or cover it up? I don't know. I find it strange. Aside from a couple of things I'll mention at the chapter's end, but moving to the final part, Roger asks him, "Don't you think the problem is the amount we use Garp?" And he says, "Amount of what?" Armament Haki is a power that won't yield even to devil fruits, and if it's also covered with Conqueror's Haki, nothing can resist it. And Garp says, "Sure, but that thing also defends itself with Conqueror's Haki. It's logical they cancel each other out." "Exactly," says Roger. "If we don't surpass his Haki, we won't harm him. If we keep wearing out like this, we'll both fall eventually. We can't beat this monster with just physical strength. So you want us to attack with all our Conqueror's Haki full power?" "Exactly. We attack without thinking what happens next. If we do that, we won't survive. If we succeed, all three of us will be out of commission. If we fail, it'll be our end." And the two get ready, and Garp says, "Hey Rox, I have no words to comfort you. I don't know what happened, but there's one thing I do understand. I understand your frustration. The truth is, this panel really hurts a lot. We see Rox crying, suffering, and just being the Rox that he is. I mean, Rox is a character who is incredibly strong, incredibly brave, and he can't do anything against this. He feels completely helpless. He's frustrated. That's the word. This reminded me of that scene from Interstellar, where the protagonist sees himself in the past and tries to trying to communicate with him, and can't, seeing everything from the outside, so to speak. I imagine Rox, in his head, with the words "end him," sees everything from the outside, and it's sad to see such a powerful character like Rox like this. I mean, we're not seeing Usopp, who's used to crying, we're seeing Xebec. This is complicated. Roger even rubs his eyes, telling himself not to cry, and both Garp and Roger prepare their blows. Rox growls, trying to express himself, but obviously he can't, and we see both attack simultaneously. Roger's sword attack, which is insane, called Divine Fire of Destruction, and Garp's attack, which reminds me a bit of Luffy's Gatling, called Infinite Iron Fist, completely shattering Rox's body. And the narrator says, "The world government tried to bury this incident in the shadows, but the fall of that chaotic organization led by Rox D, Xebec, who had shaken an entire era, resounded with an echo that couldn't be hidden, a resonance so powerful it shook the entire world. The full story of the incident finally revealed. Let's see, I have a lot to say." The first thing is that Oda must immediately explain how regeneration works. I still don't believe Rox is dead here, because I think about it and say, why is he dead? We've seen people who had Reversy domain applied to them regenerate. We've seen Broggy, whose arm was cut off and he regenerated. And yes, here we've been given the Haki explanation, but Haki is for causing harm, which is what they hadn't achieved until now. Destroying his body. Remember, the other Divine Knights were cut, had crazy things done, and were still okay. Remember, Garling had half his head split open, and then he was perfectly fine. Remember, Escopette Gaban cut Summers and Nelba, left him in pieces, and he regenerated too. It's something I still don't understand. I mean, Haki is used to hurt him, which they've already done, and that's perfect. But why won't he regenerate? I don't get it. Maybe Emu cancels the contract now that it's destroyed. That could be. But Oda needs to explain more or less how regeneration works, and how to finish off someone who has the Doy Reversy, because we still have no idea. No one can give you an objective answer because it simply doesn't exist. We discussed this at the time, and people offered me several options and ideas that could be good, but everything was based on speculation. And I think this is dangerous, because if we don't know how it works, I don't know if I should believe Rox will die here or have a different ending, which is another thing. Many people are complaining that Rox's ending isn't the best, that it's not a good conclusion and should end differently. Let's see how the next chapter goes, and how this plays out, but if I could ask, I'd like Rox to finish with some words. Similarly, this ending was somewhat predictable, as we knew how the God Valley incident closed. We see everything destroyed, it's raining, the storm has completely passed, the island is devastated, and Rox is on the ground. And Rox is thinking, have I perhaps escaped this curse? And he also says in his head, "You must live, get off this island. I can't do it. Roger, Garp, escape. You are not going to die here." And we see Muffy, Garling, and Summers approaching to put an end to Rox's life. And Xebec's last words, at least in his head, are, "Oh yes, I forgot to mention it. Thank you for putting an end to my madness." And we see Garling finish Rox and take his life. And I must say there's been much controversy, as many people didn't quite like Rox's ending. You know, this character generated great buzz in the community and was liked by many, and people say this ending feels a bit rushed, they don't quite like it, or it's too simple, and I can agree. I would have liked to see a slightly more beautiful, a little more epic ending than one so simple and generic for a character like Xebec had been built. What I find a bit strange is the Holy Knights haven't appeared in many chapters, despite major clashes in God Valley, and many pirates escaped the island without issue. We didn't see any Holy Knight confront them, then suddenly they appeared out of nowhere, returning in perfect condition to deal with David and Xebec. And to top it all off, here we have something even stranger as we see Rayleigh and Scopper Gaban saving Garp and Roger, and they have a conversation with them, saying, "What about Rox? Do you care about your enemy? You are our enemy too," says Scopper Gaban. "Rayleigh, what happened to Rox?" Roger asks Rayleigh, and Rayleigh says, "He was assassinated." And this is where I noticed something quite strange. If Garp and Roger were saved, despite Rayleigh and Gabin running, why don't the Divine Knights try to finish them off? I mean, they had a unique chance to eliminate Roger, a very powerful pirate then, and Garp. He was affiliated with the Navy, saw the world government's atrocities, and would be a future threat, so it's very strange they didn't even try to go after them. Plus, it was 3 against 2, as it was just Rayleigh and Scopper Gaban versus 3 others, meaning they could have sustained some residual damage to injure Roger and Garp, and it could have ended their lives. I don't know, it feels a bit convenient. I know many people will get mad about this, and they don't like me sharing negative opinions about One Piece or pointing out its flaws, but you know I'm always completely honest about what I like and what I don't, and this personally feels a bit too convenient and I just can't buy it. Continuing the chapter, we see the island suddenly collapse and begin to sink. And this surprised me. I don't quite understand. I don't understand why the island is sinking. When they said the island sank, I pictured something like Lelouch's lightning or something similar, because it's the only thing we've seen that could sink the island, but I don't understand why the island is sinking. I don't understand the need. I mean, I don't get the need or how it happens. Let me explain. If the island had been devastated as it was, that was fine. It seemed right. No need for it to sink, because why sink the island? The remains could stay, nothing left, especially after the fight, but the island sinks as if the earth swallows it. I haven't quite understood this. I don't know if it's because of the Haki. I'm not criticizing it as bad, I just simply don't quite understand it. I mean, I don't really care if the island sinks or not, but I don't know. I just don't quite understand it. If someone in the comments could give their opinion, their take on this, I'd like that. And we see how the narrator says this incident won't be recorded in history. As if a stage curtain fell, the island sank into the ocean, enveloped by a dense fog. These were the facts of what is known today as the God Valley incident. But after an instant of silence, a gigantic lightning bolt tore the sky, splitting in several directions. And this paved the way for countless new stories to unfold. And meanwhile, we see various panels featuring different characters who would prove very important for the story as a whole, as we see Kuma, Ivankov, Ginny, Teach, Shanks, Dragon, Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Roger, and Garps, meaning characters who would define a new era in One Piece, and some are still relevant today. Will we also have a God Valley or something like that? Or was this Marineford? I'm not sure how to interpret it, but it might be similar. Anyway, I want to mention that this lightning bolt, the way it tore the sky and split into many directions, opening the way to countless stories. I think this lightning and these events have something more. No, I'm not talking about Enel striking, obviously, but I think this lightning could have a deeper meaning. I'll discuss this in more detail with a theory I'll develop, I suppose, and I'll research it further for precedence. But a couple of things come to mind that make me say, hey, be careful with this. Suddenly we see Roger's ship, and they say they won't open the chest until Roger wakes up, so don't touch them. Then they go find Roger and say, Captain Roger, we want to open the chest now. We see Roger, mostly fine, says, I hope I didn't worry you too much. You're better. What a relief. Well, yes, look at all we have. Roger says, you fools, you care more for treasure than me. And Shaki is doing well too. We see her embracing Rayleigh. Both of them appear quite happy. Then everyone becomes very pleased and says, we'll just take them out and grab their treasure. There's a whole lot. And then suddenly we hear someone crying from inside a chest and they say, it's coming from right inside the chest. They open up the chest and exclaim, this is a baby. And we see Shanks, who is all happy. And here is the moment when Shanks meets Roger. I must say that if you've seen, for example, One Piece film Red, or the original sketches for this scene, Roger changes a lot, as Roger in this sketch and in the movie has a mustache and a hat, and he's quite a bit older and less injured. So Oda crafted several things, and I think he didn't quite get the ages right. He made Roger seem a bit too old, and then he thought, hold on, 38 years ago, Roger should be a bit younger. These are details I really like to see to observe how Oda changes. Then the narrator continues, the Rock's pirates have been annihilated. Of course, the papers were altered, and praise for hero Garp filled the headlines. And we see many people reading the papers saying, oh, they defeated the Rock's pirates. Rocks is dead. Ultimately, the strongest was Vice Admiral Garp. Garp, he's the hero, no doubt. He's going to lose it. Let's go to the Grand Line, to Marine headquarters, and we see Garp very angry, saying, what the hell is this article? That scoundrel Morgan is only telling lies. And Sengoku says, leave it, Garp, surely the government didn't bribe him to write that. Both the world government and the Marines are enormous organizations, including soldiers from affiliated countries. There are tens of millions of personnel worldwide. It's impossible to control all their movements. Even if you see the madness of high officials, just pretend you saw nothing. And I must say, I don't like this from Sengoku at all. I understand Sengoku's point, but it seems very hypocritical. I mean, you're supposed to be defending justice, and you tell someone who's realizing these things when you're supposed to already know them, and you tell them something like, well, just look the other way, don't pay much attention, and that's it. Just ignore it and move on. I find this a bit hypocritical, and I dislike it from Sengoku. It's not that I dislike what's in the manga, I find it interesting from a reader's perspective, but when applying it to One Piece's real world, I say, hey Sengoku, wise up. In fact, Garp tells him the same, fighting Sengoku and saying, that's your damn problem, Sengoku, you'd do anything just to get promoted. And Sengoku says, shut up, you won't change a thing barking from the abyss's depths? And Garp says, if you ever turn corrupt, I'll surely come to kill you. And Sengoku says, that's why I'm glad to have you as my best friend. You're not resigning, are you, Garp? And Garp says, I have many to protect deep in that abyss, and I won't abandon them. And I must say, truly, Garp's character is the best written in all of One Piece. People criticized him for not turning against the world government, for defending the Navy. And we must also understand Garp's character. Garp wants to help people, and the Navy is his way. He can't act freely. He knows what those above do isn't right, but sadly, as Sengoku says, he can't change it, especially alone. At least he wants to help everyone he can from there. He never was an admiral, precisely for this, because he said, I'm fine here. I don't want to be an admiral, because then I'd have to take orders from the Tenryubito, as we've seen. And that home, he rejects it and finds it disgusting. Then, even with Ace, it's too late to regret what happens in the Marines, as it means giving up his entire life. I find him an incredible character. We move to the new world, Elbaf, but still in the past, and we see Loki very angry, shouting and remembering Rox's words. You again? I won't let you on board. How many times must I tell you, runt? Do you really think I'll admit a kid into my crew? The man I want attention from doesn't even look at me, and a crying brat like you just keeps bothering me. And Loki said, I think you are Nika, Rox. And Rox says, Nika? And Loki replies, he's the warrior of liberation who destroys the world laughing. And Rox says, destroy everything, you say? I want to be king of the world. If anyone has such power, it must be your old man. I love this because it truly confirms my wish to be king of the world, and his son will achieve it, Teach will achieve it. Rox continues, listen Loki, somewhere in the world are these Galela, terrible destroyers who lie dormant, and the only one who can wake them is your father. I really should dedicate a video to analyzing this because there's so much to discuss. First of all, it says they are terrible destroyers who remain asleep. It's referring to the giants we saw on Punk Hazard, who are frozen, but there's a lot to know here. How does he know this? Why does he say asleep if he doesn't know where they are? And if he doesn't know where they are, he doesn't know they're frozen. Many questions here. We lack info on what he truly knew. And it also mentions destroyers. I said this live, and beware that Pluton might be Galela's people, meaning Pluton isn't the ship, but the name given to Galela's carpenters somehow. Be careful with this, because all the info Crocodile gave us about Pluton were just rumors. It would make sense if the name Pluton was given to a ship, but back then, it referred to the carpenters who built such a massive thing. That would be quite interesting. Zebek continues, saying, I can gather all the villains of the world, but if Harold and I were to join forces, there would be nothing and no one who could stop us. And Loki says, Wow, incredible. Then he remembers and thinks, why didn't my father join Rocks? For love, surely, but I'll meet him 100 times, 200 if I must. And we see him looking at the paper, unable to stop crying. Then we go to an island and hear King Harold of Elbaf is attacking, and they ask, is he attacking civilians? No, those being hit are giant thugs. It's really violent, and we see a very angry Harold saying, you still haven't understood, have you? I promise I'll never hit humans again, says that giant. I'm very sorry, but Harold says they definitely don't understand anything at all acting that way. You're nothing but enormous trash. Because of trash like you, we have such a bad reputation. And because of that, people don't trust us. Not even when we say we want to join the government peacefully. I've already lost consciousness, your majesty, people say. For Elbaf to join the world government and not disappoint them, I couldn't go to help you. I abandoned my best friend, who begged me for help. He died because of me. And I must say, I feel no pity for Harold's character here, because he seems quite foolish to me. I've been saying that for a long time. Several things about Harold at first seemed very noble, very honest to me, and I really like this character, you know, admirable. But then you see certain things like the government is laughing at Harold, humiliating him, manipulating news, doing things against Harold, and Harold just keeps going and going and going and going. And I understand wanting to free his people, but honestly, he's being foolish, because it's one thing to want to free your people and another to keep banging your head against a wall, seeing the wall hit you back, and you just keep going and going and going. It makes no logical sense. It's not that the character is badly written, not at all, but he's just so dumb. There's a phrase I like, he's so good, he's stupid. Well, Harold is exactly this. He's so good, he's stupid. Harold shouts, there's no turning back. He'll never forgive any giant who commits an evil act. The narrator says, the king of the giants goes mad. We see this news is published directly in the world newspaper once again, annoying Harold. We go to Marine headquarters, the underground prison. We see Dragon, who is handcuffed, say, old man, I'm leaving the Marines. And Garp says, I know. I despise you, says Dragon. And Garp says, I know. And he throws him the key so he can leave, starting Dragon's journey. I really want to see Garp's entire past. I'd like to see a past dedicated to Garp, another dedicated to Dragon, and I'd like to see a scene where Dragon and Luffy meet. And if we can get a Dragon, Luffy, Garp, or Dragon Garp, or similar, I'd love it. We return to Elbaf and see, Harold, I've made a decision. Ida, Lord Gerald, nothing matters now. I won't hold back, and you two are my precious children. Make sure you get along. Together you can protect and sustain Elbaf. We cut to Marineford, Marine headquarters, and they say, it's the king of Elbaf's ship. What's happening? I'm sorry, Harold. We have orders from above not to let him land. Harold gets down and says, then tell the High Navy officials and world government leaders to listen to what I have to say. And he rips off his horns as we were told at the start of his introduction, and the Marines say, whoa, that must hurt. And Harold says, let me pay for all the mistakes made by the giants 1,000 years ago. I want to clear up the misunderstandings the giants have caused. From now on, I want Elbaf's justice to exist without harm, and for us all to live in peace. I want to show our oath of unity and peace, so giants and humans can live together. I beg you to give me a chance to pay for all my sins. If necessary, I am willing to become a slave. And Emu stares at him, and this is what Emu said. There will never be a king as manipulable and idiotic as Harold. So here we have it. The government laughs at him, keeps doing 1,000 things to him, and Harold, instead of trying to change the situation, or having joined Rocks and overthrown the world government, well, he decided no. He wanted to join the world government despite them doing 1,000 things to him. Finally, he defied the world government to no avail and likely became a slave, which later led to the Doy Reversy.